almost 25,000 South Africans through that series. The other source is called the Election Satisfaction Survey. That one is more narrowly a survey of people who are participating in elections. So with each election day, we have members of our research team at a select representative sample of voting stations, asking people about their election experiences as they leave the voting stations. And so far we've surveyed almost 120,000 voters through that series. As was mentioned earlier, we've developed jointly with the Commission a new knowledge project. It's called the Election Indicators Report Series. Do you want me to reboot the machine maybe? Okay. Apologies for the technical glitch. I'm just going to try and reboot the machine. Looks like it's frozen. Can I use one of your machines maybe instead? Have you got it loaded up and ready? Might be quicker. Still giving problems. I think it might be this system to be, so it's not about the machine. Great, I think we're back again. So, as I was saying, we've developed a new knowledge project called the Election Indicators Report Series. It's really looking at trends over quite a lengthy period of time to understand the changing nature of the voting age public in the country and within provinces, as well as how the views of the voters themselves are changing. So we've got a national report and a set of provincial reports, including one for KZN, which is what we're talking to today. And those are all freely available for download already off the Election Commission's website. So I encourage you to go and look at the website, download the report for more information than we can realistically provide today. I want to start with a bit of context. Obviously, elections and electoral developments don't happen in a vacuum. So over recent years, there's really been growing debate and contestation around the nature and about particularly its bearing on political legitimacy, as well as on political behaviour of citizens. And there's also evidence that over time that we've seen changing citizenship norms as they pertain to elections. So is the idea of a swing away from electoral participation to other forms of political expression and political activity. There's also been the rising conversation about the need for a recommitment to active citizenship as a concept. Something about the, and a recommitment to the cherished cornerstones of electoral democracy. In the last 50 years or so, democracy has accomplished one of the biggest success stories. The political scientist Samuel Huntington talked about between 74 and 90, 30 countries transitioned into democracy, and that's been commonly referred to as the third wave of democracy. Between 1974 and the mid-2000s, we saw the number of democracies worldwide either increase or remain steady and consolidate. However, what we've seen in certainly since the mid-2000s, and it's accelerated certainly in the 2010s, we've seen that the world has been in a mild but a fairly protracted democratic recession, as it's termed in the literature these days. In terms of these dynamics, the 90s and early 2000s are characterized fundamentally by prevailing optimism about the future of democracy. But since the mid-2000s, with this democratic recession that I've talked about, we've seen that over at least 16 consecutive years, we've seen a decline in electoral and democratic consolidation. And particularly in the last 5 or 6 years or so, we've seen a fundamental deterioration of democratic norms as well as institutions. And we've also seen the well-documented rise of authoritarian tendencies in a number of countries around the world. So this is really raising a fundamental concern, and if you look at journals like the Journal of Democracy, that's coming through very strongly now, this narrative around, are we moving from just democratic recession, the kind of normal ebbs and flows in democratic tendencies, towards a sort of mounting or gathering crisis of liberal democracy as a whole. So just bear this sort of debate and contestation in the back of your minds as we go through the results today. So I've talked a bit about this, about the surveys that we draw on. I'll give you a little bit of information about the engine under the car of these surveys. So the purpose of the voter participation survey is to provide information on the views and behavioural preferences of adult South Africans to better understand firstly the electoral context in the country specifically, and inform the Commission in its electoral management mandate. The survey has been conducted using the HSRC South African Social Attitude Survey Research Infrastructure. It's a representative survey series that's been going on for now 20 years. It builds on earlier surveying going back to the late 80s, early 90s. It's designed to be nationally representative of the population 16 years and older, living in private households around the 9 provinces. Each year we draw a representative sample of 500 small areas countrywide using the census framework, and we draw 3,500 addresses. We then go to those addresses and administer face-to-face interviews with the randomly selected individuals 16 years living at that visiting point. The data is then, after we've collected it, is weighted to match Stats SA's most recent mid-year population estimates on a range of characteristics. The second survey, which is more narrowly focusing on voters, is called, as I said, it's the Election Satisfaction Survey Series. It's aiming to determine the perceptions of voters regarding the freeness and fairness of the electoral process, and to assess the operational efficiency of the Commission in managing all aspects of the election. So the sample design is again a random probability sample with a multi-stage procedure. We draw from the database of voting stations that is provided by the Commission. We merge it with census enumerator area data. And we randomly choose with each round of this surveying 300 voting stations countrywide, proportional to a range of characteristics, including province. It's designed to be provincially representative. And at the voting stations, field workers randomly interview 50 voters in certain time segments across election day to ensure a fair representation of voters. I know it's sounding like a lecture, but we have to talk a little bit about conceptualization. There are 2 or 3 strands of conceptual background that we drew on for this election indicators report series. The first one was talked a little bit about in relation to the report that Commissioner Mashanini mentioned through the EIP, and this is the idea of electoral integrity. And the IEC fares globally well on this account. So this is a concept that's grown in interest and attention over the last decade in particular. And the focus is particularly on assessing the quality of elections over time. So it evaluates all different aspects of election management structures and the associated processes. It uses particularly a positive human rights framing of electoral integrity, where integrity is seen to be achieved when the electoral procedures meet established norms and standards at each of the different stages of the electoral cycle, and that's represented in that in that chart on the screen, showing from the pre-election period through campaigning, through election day itself, and to the immediate post-election period with the counting and declaration of results. The second strand of conceptual theory drew on is really one that dates all the way back to in political sciences to the mid-1950s, which is really about different conceptualizations of democratic or political support. So in this case, the scope of analysis that we draw on is to assess people's attachment to democratic values and principles, to test opinion on the performance of government and other key political institutions in the country, to investigate attitudes to electoral participation and other political activities, as well as examine generational and other salient subgroup differences that might be emerging over time. So the framework that we use most commonly is the one that's shown in those concentric circles on the right-hand side. And what you need to think of is it goes from the most general or diffuse level down to the most specific level of evaluation of political support. And we can see at the outer circle is national identities. That's issues, feelings of civic pride, etc. Feelings of national identity. Then we move on to the second tier, which is approval of core regime principles and values. So that's the extent to which there's an inherent belief in core values, core principles. There's a real demand for democracy. Then we move to the evaluative side. So how is democracy performing specifically? So moving from demand to your views on the supply of democracy on a day-to-day basis. Then we move to the views on the institutions. So to what extent do citizens vest trust in a range of political institutions? And lastly, at the heart is what are the feelings about incumbent office holders, views on leadership, political leadership. And these are all seen to be interlinked. What happens at the inner circle would affect the outer layers over time. So if there's very positive approvals of leadership, you'd expect that to promote trust in the institutions, in turn promote sense that they're performing well, lead to continued demand for democracy, and lead to kind of warm, fuzzy feelings around we feel proud about our nation. It can work the other way around. If you're unhappy with performance, it can have this constant pull-down effect. And so we'll engage with those ideas throughout what we present shortly. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Samela to just take you through the next set of results. Thank you very much.
Greetings everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. I will be communicating with you the general evaluations of democracy, and we are mainly focusing on the KZN province. So, Mr. Mashinini did mention that stats can be challenging to a few people. So before we go into details, I would like to first explain what each line means. Because right through the presentation, we'll be presenting figures like this. So if we look at this figure, every time you see a graph, just know that the yellow line is representing the KwaZulu-Natal province. So each time you see a figure, yellow, that's KwaZulu-Natal. And then the gray line, that is the national average. It's when all the feedback you receive from 9 provinces, you add it together, is the figure you get. That is the national average. And then there's the green line and the red line. In simple terms, let's just look at it as the red as a danger zone, like in a robot. That's a danger zone. And then the green, that is good. It's a go-ahead. That means if the KZN province is trading closer to the green line, that means it can be counted among those that have been receiving positive feedback from its public. And if it's trailing closer to the red line, that means, yeah, we're in trouble. Yeah, she said it. So if the yellow line is touching the green, that means the KZN can be counted among those that are best performing in whatever we'll be presenting in that figure. If it touches the red or crosses the red, that means we have been receiving negative feedback from the public. So we're good when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Okay, now let us look at, discuss our findings in details. So looking at national pride, this is patriotism from our citizens within the KwaZulu-Natal province. So if we look at our figures here, patriotism were increased in 2003 up until 2008. And it has been trending above national averages. So this is positive feedback. And you can see it increased steadily from 86% to 95% during the 2003 to 2008 period. But however, this was followed by a steady decline, reaching 85% in 2012. It's a decline that reaches 85%, but that's also 85 is quite a positive figure when you look at people's patriotism or their pride being South Africans. Then the year 2016, it was once again followed by a steady decline until it fell below national averages in the year 2020. And then the most recent feedback, which is the year 2021, feedback has been less than optimistic. We reached 73% in the year 2021. It was at its highest in the year 2008, and then it declined steadily until it reached 73%. But looking at the national average, though, it seems that the KZN, even though it declined, but it's still trending around above the national average in 2010. And then looking at the demand for democracy. Okay, when looking at demand for democracy in the KwaZulu-Natal provinces, we introduced 3 statements to the respondent. We said to them, which of these 3 statements is closest to your own opinion? The first statement was, democracy is preferable to any other kind of government. The second we presented was, in some circumstances, a non-democratic government can be preferable. For someone like me, it doesn't matter what kind of government we have. So looking at our figure over there, 62% of the population in the year 2011, they believe that democracy is most preferable. And I think that is the highest stats as you look at our trend across the 2011 to the 2021 period. A non-democratic regime to 25% of the population in 2021 was preferable. You can see democracy is preferable to any other kind of government. Is trailing very high, but then it's been declining steadily over the period. And what has been increasing over the period is, for someone like me, it doesn't matter what kind of governance we have. So some people basically have a fatalistic view. They simply believe that it does not matter what kind of government we have. So the proportion of people who have this view, it increased steadily over time from 18% in 2011 until it reached 41% in 2019. And by the latest survey period, which is 2021, it had reduced to 33%, but this is still a large proportion nonetheless. And then let us look at another slide. It says here, how satisfied are you with the way democracy is working in South Africa? So once again, we have those trend lines, yellow, gray, green, red. I think we can look by, just by looking at this figure, a few times the KwaZulu-Natal is touching the danger zone. Throughout the period 2003 to 2021, the KZN has been trending below the national averages with the exception of the year 2011, and that is the only period that the KZN province has been trending above national average. So we would say that people here in the KZN province are not exactly satisfied with democracy right throughout the period. It's been declining with time. It's been fluctuating, but it's declining with time, and it was at its lowest in 2021 at 12%. So this is rather not unoptimistic when it comes to feedback from the public within the KZN province. Now, let us look at living standards. To measure people's experience or their opinions when it comes to living standards, we asked them 2 questions. The first was, could you please tell me, in the last 5 years, has life improved, stayed the same, or is it worsened for you and your family? So this is someone telling you, I personally and my family, we feel. So this is basically us, a person saying, myself personally and my family, life has been this form of experience in the past 5 years. And then the second figure on my right-hand side, it says, could you please tell me in the last 5 years, has life improved, stayed the same, or has it worsened for your community? So the first, they evaluate themselves, and then they evaluate the environment in which they live in, their communities. So if we're looking at the figures here, specifically beginning with the family, we can see that the green bars, they say life has improved. The yellow, it stayed the same. Red, it means it has worsened. But as we can see across all provinces, the red bars are bigger. So people feel like in the past 5 years, their life has not improved. It has worsened. So nothing has been positive from them when it comes to the past 5 years in regards to their experience of life. And then if you look at the green bars are a little smaller. So people in the past 5 years, they haven't been experiencing life positively. And the KwaZulu-Natal province is second least likely to say that life in the last 5 years has improved. As you can see, it's at 12%. Only 12% of our population says life has improved for themselves and their families. And this is 1% higher than Mpumalanga and the Western Cape, which are the lowest provinces when it comes to satisfaction with their life in the past 5 years. And then the other figure on your right, it says, could you please tell me in the last 5 years, has life stayed the same, improved, or worsened for you and your community? Once again, the bars are very big across all 9 provinces, not just the KwaZulu-Natal province. People feel like life has not been easy for their community in general. The KZN is at 15% when it comes to optimism, saying that their life has been good or they've experienced it positively. And the country with the biggest red bar, it's Mpumalanga, with 64% of the community feeling like that life has not been positive in the past 5 years. And then we are looking at change in living standards within the KwaZulu-Natal province. Okay, so we introduced 2 questions to our respondents. The first one was, do you think the following have improved, stayed the same, or gotten worse in the last 5 years? We also asked them, do you think the following will improve, stay the same, or get worse in the next 5 years? So we are asking them to evaluate the last 5 years, and then we're looking at their optimism when it comes to the next 5 years. So when they evaluate the last 5 years, we ask them to give their opinion on corruption within the province or the country, and then unemployment within the province, cost of living, crime and safety, service provision delivery. So in the last 5 years, majority of the KZN province, they believe that life has worsened for them. And you can look at corruption. 90%, they said corruption has worsened in the province. Unemployment at 89%. 89% of our respondents said, yeah, Unemployment has been declining in the past 5 years. The cost of living, fuel, food, etc. So people said in the past 5 years, things got worse. Crime and safety, 72%. Service provision and delivery, 69%. As you can see, the green bars are really, really small when it comes to people believing that their life, things have gotten worse in the past 5 years. And then we look at optimism. Do you think the following will improve in the next 5 years? Corruption went from only 81% of our respondents in the KwaZulu-Natal believe that things will not improve. Things will worsen in the next 5 years, so they're not quite optimistic when it comes to corruption within our institution. And then unemployment, 75% still think that they'll be jobless in the next 5 years. Crime and safety, 72%. Think it's going to get worse. Cost of living, 72% think it's going to get worse. Service provision and delivery, almost 60% feel it's going to get worse. So the least optimism when it comes to improvement in the next 5 years is about corruption, as we can see on the figure on your right-hand side. And then we look at specific institutions now. We look at trust in specific institutions such as the national government, parliament, and the local government. If we can look at these three figures, we see fluctuation, but the fluctuation is declining. It's showing a decline over time from the year 2003 up to the year 2021. So if you can look at the evaluation of the national government, we see there's a steady decline, and it was highest mostly in 2009. Trust in our national government, and then parliament as well. Trust in parliament has been declining steadily from the year. It was highest in 2007, and then it trickled down steadily until it was at its lowest in our most recent survey, that is 2021. So we are really in trouble when it comes to our public institutions. And then there's the local government as well. There's also a decline in trust in our local government. So we have a bit of work to do as South Africans. So let us go to our next slide. Now let us look at the Electoral Commission, the reason we gathered here today. So how is the trust in the Electoral Commission? There is, okay, trust started off as lower from the year 2003 to the year 2005. At 2005, it was at 58%. But there were very optimistic views about the IEC as of 2016, even touching the green line, trending above national averages. So 2006 to 2010, the public was very optimistic, and then the decline is notable and steady until it touches the red line on our most recent survey in 2021. I will explain later what actually affected the public trust in the IEC within the KZN province. Okay, let me explain now why the trust in the IEC is diminishing over time. It goes back to these three figures here: trust in national government, trust in parliament, trust in local government. And then the IEC takes the brunt. And then as soon as people lose trust in these three institutions or the major institutions within the country, the IEC is affected as well, even though it's not part of parliament per se, and not part of the local government, etc. So basically what this means is that if citizens trust the government, they are bound to trust the IEC as well. So a declining trust in large institutions such as parliament, the national government, and the local government, it's dragging down trust in the IEC as well. So if citizens are satisfied with the way democracy is working also have confidence in the IEC. So if a person is saying, I'm happy with the way democracy is functioning in our country, the IEC receives positive feedback as well. But if a person is dissatisfied with the way democracy is working in our country, the IEC takes the brunt. So increasing dissatisfaction with the function of democracy is also pulling down trust. We also saw a graph, there was a graph showing the decline in satisfaction with democracy. So this affects public opinion when it comes to the IEC. So if people are happy with the national economy, South Africa's economy has been struggling in the past couple of years. It's even reflected in people believing that things have gotten worse in the country. You saw those two figures. Things are getting worse in the country. Will they get better? People are not very optimistic. So people, if are affected negatively by the economy, cost of food is rising, cost of fuel is rising, unemployment is increasing as well. So as soon as people are frustrated and stressed out, the IEC also gets affected by that. So also, if the public is pleased with the service delivery, they're also most likely to be optimistic when it comes to giving opinion about the IEC. So lack of trust in our main institution is damaging trust in the IEC. So that is what's happening. So let's look at the duty to vote. This is what we asked the respondent. To what extent do you agree or disagree that it is the duty of all citizens to vote? Do our people believe that voting is important and therefore have a duty to vote during an election, whether it's national, provincial, etc.? So this question was not fielded in the year 2006. We can see there's some dots, a line missing in 2006. But we can note that in most years, except for the year 2012, the KZN is trending above national averages. So people are still believe that there's power to their vote. So duty to vote was highest in 2011 at 89%, and then there's some fluctuation in the following years until it reached 76% in 2021. In 2021, you can see the KZN even touched the green line, which means it can be counted amongst those that believe that voting is important. Come election day, it is my duty as a citizen to vote. So this is very positive feedback here. So internal political efficacy. Political efficacy, this is the belief that one can influence the government or political affairs within the country if they vote. This would mean that they have trust in the power of their vote, that they can make a difference with their vote. So if we look at these figures here, the KZN province, political efficacy, there's evidence of a decline over time from a maximum of 68% in 2008, far above the national average, to 27% in 2020. So there has been a steady decline from the year 2003 up until 2021. Let us look at external political efficacy. So the lack of trust in politicians has increased, it has decreased citizens' belief in their duty to vote. So, and if the belief that their vote will make a difference, their belief is that their trust in political parties, or lack of trust, therefore, affects their belief in the power of their vote. If people don't trust their politicians or the national government or parliament, etc., people are least likely to believe that there's a power to my vote. If I cast my vote, I can influence politics. If I cast my vote, I can influence our leadership within the country. So people end up intending not to vote because of lack of trust. That is evident across the period. So voter registration and turnout intentions. Okay, now let us look at these two figures here. These figures represent a registered voter as a percentage of the voting age population. So if we look at KZN, 73% of people of voting age are registered voters. The KZN has the second highest number of registered voters nationally. It's at 73%. That is after the Eastern Cape, which is at 77%. And looking at the right figure, the figure on your right, so the proportion of registered voters has been increasing with time within the province. So this is very, very positive feedback, and it's trending far above the red line, as we can see on that figure. And then let us look at KwaZulu-Natal voter attitudes towards registration. This is how they experience the voting registration process. So how do people experience voting registration services within the KwaZulu-Natal province? We first evaluated time, the amount of time it took for them to, when they get to the voting station or registration station, how much time did they spend there registering to be voters in the upcoming elections. So 2018 and 2021, it took 10 to 11 minutes tops on average when they were registering to vote. This is the lowest it has ever taken within the KZN province to register to vote. The amount of time taken registered have been decreasing over the years. You can see in 2021, the least amount of time was taken to vote was taken to register by KZN residents. And then we ask, how easy or difficult did you find it to register to vote? More than 90% of our registered, of our voters within the KZN province, they found it easy to register. The feedback is even trending above national averages. And also in the year 2010, it was almost all the people, 99% of the people that responded to the question, they said it was easy. Oh, sorry, the 99% is for the time it took to, 99% believe it was easy to register when you visited the voting station in 2010. So almost all respondents in the year 2010 said that it was easy to register. And the lowest level of reported easiness was in the year 2013. Now looking at the next figure here, we are looking at attitudes towards online registration. Yeah. So moving from paper-based and just going to online registration, doing it in the comfort of your home, using your cell phone or your laptop. So we asked the people this question: do you agree or disagree that online registration will make voter registration easier and more effective? More than half of the KZN population, 55%, believe that there will be some form of convenience if we move to online registration. And then we also asked them, do you agree or disagree that online voter registration should still be used after the COVID-19 pandemic? So even after the pandemic has lapsed, do we think that we should continue with online registrations? Almost half of the population, which is a little lower than those who agree or disagree that online registration will make voter registration easy. So 47% of our population here in the KwaZulu-Natal province, they think that we should continue with online registration even after COVID-19. Do you agree or disagree that online registration will introduce more electoral fraud? 44% believe that using online registration, there might be some cases of fraud. So this is the opinion of those in the KwaZulu-Natal province. Here's one of those figures again with plenty of lines. So we ask people, we are actually measuring the people's intention to vote. So we ask them, if the government election was held tomorrow, would you vote? So intention to vote has been trending below national averages in most of the survey years. So it has not been fluctuating over the period. It has been stable, but fluctuating over the 2003 to the 2021 period. So it was highest in 2006 and 2011 at 79%, fluctuated until it reached 59% in 2021. So people that believe that there was an election tomorrow, I would be patriotic and I would go and vote. So this declined to 59% in 2021. So people's intention to vote has been, pessimistic. Yes, almost half the person that said it. And then percentage of registered voter turnout. We first asked people, have you been registered? And we have noticed that a large proportion of the KZN population has been registered to vote. But of those people that are registered to vote, what is the proportion that actually turns out? So for local government election turnout of the registered people, so registered voter turnout has been increasing with time for local government election, eventually reaching 61% in 2016. But after 2016, it declined, reaching 48% in 2021. So voter turnout decreased to 48% in 2021. So voter turnout for the national and provincial elections has also been decreasing steadily since the year 1999. It was at 87% in 1999, which is a very impressive figure, but it decreased until it reached 67% in the year 2019. There's been a decline in voter turnout. And then, what is the rationale for non-participation in the KwaZulu-Natal province? Why do people register and not turn out to vote? Or why do people simply decide, I'm not going to vote in the upcoming elections, even if it was tomorrow? So we asked them, what is the main reason for thinking that you would not vote if the national election were held tomorrow? So these are the options that were put forward. It's because someone is disinterested or disillusioned in politics. So the KwaZulu-Natal was the highest compared to anywhere else. It was at 75%. 75% of the population are saying, I would not vote tomorrow because I'm disillusioned. Anywhere else it's at an average of 71%, which is also high anyway. And then the 19% says, no, I'm not registered, that's why I would not vote, or I'm too young. And then that was 2021, that is the most recent survey. And then in 2010, disappointment or disillusioned with politics or politicians was at 54%. But we note that it was 54% in 2010, but it increased with time, reaching 75% in 2021. So this is not very positive feedback. It didn't just increase in the KwaZulu-Natal province, it increased anywhere else, from 61% in 2010 to 71% in 2021. So we look at party loyalty right here. Okay, how do the KZN people handle disappointment? With disappointment because of unfulfilled expectations from their political parties or their political leader. So we asked them this question: if the party you voted for did not meet your expectation next time there is an election, would you A, vote for another party, not vote at all, or give the party another chance? or wait for an explanation and then you decide what you're going to do. But our KZN people here are loyalists. They're very loyal to their political parties. So they say 45% said, I would give my party another political chance, another chance to lead. And this is far above the national averages. It's 45% in KZN. Anywhere else, you can say it's about 38%. So the loyalty is very impressive. Okay. I think my colleague is supposed to take over, am I right? Okay, we're not there yet. Let us look at, we're not there yet. Okay, let us look at campaign integrity. How do political parties handle themselves when it comes to campaigns for elections? So this is the perceived campaign integrity, looking at the figures over there. So our intention was to determine public views on vote buying. Is there instances of vote buying during the election campaign? And this is data that was gathered in year 2021. So, campaign integrity, is there any form of corruption? Do people believe that there is any form of corruption when politicians and political parties are campaigning for upcoming elections? So, the first figure is a representation of the belief that some people receive cash, gifts, or services for their votes. So there's some form of bribery. The second figure says voters are bribed. So if we look at the proportion that believes that people receive cash, gifts, or services for their votes, and maybe some form of bribe from a politician or political party, 44% of the KZN population believes so. And then 44% also believe that voters are being bribed when it comes to election campaigns. But what is impressive, though, is that KZN is not the highest that believes that votes are being bought by politicians from their population. So this is quite positive, because you look at GP, 67% believe that voting and the campaign process is not fair, because there are people who receive money so that they can cast their votes for a certain political party. Okay, now let's look at fairness during election campaign. Do the rich have the upper hand compared to the non-rich? 42% of the KZN province, they believe that rich people, they buy votes during elections. But this is highest compared to other provinces. It's KZN is the fourth highest to believe that rich people have the upper hand when it comes to elections, because they're able to afford to buy votes. What about journalistic coverage? Our SABC, right, yeah? Do people believe that our journalistic coverage is fair during elections? So is there any form of bias in journalism? More than half of our people here in the KZN, 53%. This is even higher than the national average. If you see national average is at 51%, KZN is at 53%. They believe that somehow our journalistic coverage is not fair during campaigning periods. Are political parties tolerating each other during campaigns? What is the take of those residing in the KZN province? There's a strong belief that intolerance among political parties. This was highest in the year 2014 and slightly more than 90%. So there is evidence of a decline over time until it was at its lowest at 80% in 2021. So if you look at the figures here, in 2014, the KZN province is touching the green line. So people in the KZN province, they are most likely to believe that political party candidates and political party as a whole they were tolerant of one another during the campaign period. But with time, it declined slightly, even falling below a national average in 2021. And there's also, we looked at racial group. We found an interesting finding there that Indian voters are more likely to view party conduct as intolerant. When we ran the numbers and did a bivariate analysis or a multivariate analysis, we realized that Indian voters are not happy are not happy with political party conduct during the election period. So 5% of voters in the KZN province, they reported political coercion. This increased significantly from the year 2014. I will hand over to my colleague. She will give you a very interesting session.
Well done. Good morning to all the stakeholders gathered here today. My name is Utobeka Zondi. I will be taking you through this section of the presentation. It actually paints a much positive picture about the IEC. So when we are looking at the number of civic and democracy education events, so we can see here that the number of CDE events in KZN in the 2021 and 2022 financial year, the IEC had 5,963. So this translates to 81.8 events per 100,000 of the voting age population. So KZN is slightly lower than the national average with its reach with the CDE events. And then when we're looking at the voting information, so the level of information that citizens have on voting. So we asked respondents here, do you think you have too little or too much information about how to vote? And we can see that 31% said they have too little information, which is slightly below the national average. And when we look at subgroups, we can see that the young citizens are less likely to have enough information about voting, and that Indian citizens are less likely to have information than Black African voters. However, when we do deeper analysis, we can see that there's no much differences between urban and rural citizens. And then when we look at the sources of voting information, so the objective here was to determine the main voting information sources used by the public. So we can see that the public normally gets its sources via your traditional sources such as your TV, radio, newspaper, and posters. So when we're assessing the perceived effectiveness of voter education campaigns, so we asked the question, how effective was the IEC's voter education campaign for these elections? So we can see here that 83% of the voters thought that the IEC campaign was a useful source of voter information, and we can see a significant increase from 2014 when only 61% said it was useful. So we're looking at the voting experience on the actual voting day. So here we were assessing the time to get to the voting station. So we asked respondents, how long did it take you to get to the voting station? And we can see here that there's an average time of 18 minutes that it took voters in KZN to get to their voting station. And we can also see that the time taken to reach one's voting station has improved and has remained stable over time. We also looked at queuing time. So we asked respondents, how long did you queue before voting? And we can see here that between 1999 and 2021, the average length of time voters spent queuing in the province was 12%. And we can see that the average queuing time for voters has steadily improved since 1999, where voters stood 47 minutes. So when looking at the accessibility of voting stations to voters with special needs in KZN, so the question here was how easily accessible was the voting station to persons with disabilities or the elderly. So the proportion of KZN voters who felt that voting stations were accessible to persons with disability was high in all the survey rounds. 96% stated that the voting station was accessible to the elderly, and 89% stated that it was accessible to persons living with disabilities. So when looking at the procedure inside the voting station, how easy it is to understand, in the KZN province, there's a large positive picture, as we can see here, that it's actually quite high. Almost all respondents were satisfied with the quality of service that the IEC officials provided to voters, and was also quite high in assessing how easy or difficult it was to understand the procedures inside the voting station. So when looking at the conduct of electoral officials, there's a relatively little change in most evaluations over time. The proportion of voters who viewed officials as impartial has declined since 2009, and rural voters are more negative about impartiality than their urban counterparts. When assessing the safety and secrecy of the votes at voting stations, majority, 93% of voters in KZN, had faith in the arrangements made by voting stations to ensure the secrecy of their votes in 2021. And nearly all, 96% of voters in KZN, had faith in the arrangements made by voting stations to ensure the secrecy of their votes. So when looking at the satisfaction and ease of use of the ballot paper, more than half, 57% of voters in KZN, were very satisfied with the ballot paper used in the national and provincial elections in 2019. This demonstrates that overall voters were fairly pleased with the ballot design, and majority, 61% of voters in KZN, said it was easy finding the party of choice on the ballot. When assessing the perceived electoral freeness in KZN, so there's an overwhelming majority of voters in 2021 elections, 88%, felt that election procedures were free, and a further 4% said that they were free with minor problems, and 1% said they were not free at all. And it's actually positive, but lower than what was seen in 2014 and 2011, when more than 90% rated the election as completely free. When we look at the perceived electoral fairness in KZN, there's an overwhelming majority of voters in 2021, where 88% felt that the election procedures were fair, and a further 4% said that they were free with minor problems, and 1% said they were not at all free. So I will call upon my boss to take you through the conclusions and what do these stats mean. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you all wish you were doing statistics now. So to pull it all together, we've seen quite a big mix of views coming through from relative to what Samela presented versus what Tobeka presented. So let's just think, sort of digest what that might mean. So certainly in the last two elections, the national provincial election of 2019 and the 2021 local government election, these were really undertaken amongst some of the harshest political moods certainly from the public perspective we've seen since 1994. KwaZulu-Natal is no exception in this regard, and in fact, certainly on the general views around context, which Samela presented, KZN tends to fare appreciably worse than many other provinces, including Gauteng. So we were particularly negative around issues of the demand for democracy. We saw that rise of fatalism. The satisfaction in democracy is the lowest of all provinces at 12% as of late 21. It's not improved with the 22 figures. We've just looked at the 22 figures. There's not been a dramatic reversal. So again, in KZN, people are particularly negative about the way democracy is functioning for them. Living standards, we saw that, and that was before the recent cost of living crisis that we've seen and are still experiencing. So we can expect those harsh views on living standards to get even worse again. In terms of the electoral attitudes, we see that those are beginning to change alongside democratic evaluations. Nationally, we see fluctuating sense of civic duty to vote, but as was presented in Gauteng, in KZN, it's 78% still. So perhaps that is still, for now, part of the good news story in KZN, is this remain linked, despite the harsh views coming through on the way democracy is performing in key political institutions, we still believe quite strongly in this province in the duty to vote. However, we are seeing quite a substantive decline in views around the efficacy of that vote. So we saw that the sense that my vote makes a difference is only around the 34% mark. The sense that the political representatives are acting in one's interest and that inspires you to continue to want to vote, that's at 30%. So there's this disjuncture between duty at 78% and these very low or moderate to low levels of political efficacy. That's really got to be taken into account, because on turnout we have seen that decline occurring in the province. It's 59% as was shown in the most recent election, and that disillusionment is the key driver of that. And I think what we need to worry about fundamentally is if those views about the power of one's vote, the power of the X, if that continues to drop, that very high duty to vote might start to become quite shaky, and it can change quite quickly. It has changed quite significantly in other provinces. So KZN for now has resisted that. It can happen. And what will that have on effect will that have on turnout? It will have a very dramatic one, because duty to vote, like the efficacies beliefs, are very strong predictors of turnout. So that's one to really watch in the province. For now, the message remains a good news story on that account, though, on the duty side. We also saw this huge polarization. I think it's quite striking between what Semela and Tobeka presented. So Semela's was the voting age public as a whole, 18 years and older, and Tobeka's was more narrowly the views of voters on election day. So we're seeing real massive discontent amongst the general voting age public in the province versus quite happy voters. And that includes on trust in the Commission. If you ask voters in KZN, do you trust the Commission? It's not the 35% we saw amongst the general voting public. It is actually up to the 80% mark. So that's the disconnect. You've got happy voters and a broader disillusioned mass. And that's what we need to worry about. With past elections, we have these routine engagements after each election with the Commission, both national and provincial structures, where we talk about what does it all mean, how would we interpret what we're seeing. Our typical view in the past has been the survey points to a growing critical view and evaluation of democracy amongst the voting age public. And we saw this was like almost a shouting shout from the public to the elected to say, we want greater accountability, please. A real concern with the last couple of rounds is increasingly that the sense that this accountability might not be materializing is spilling over into fatalism. And KZN is one of the strongest upswings in fatalistic views that we've seen across the provinces. The share that say it doesn't matter, they're not saying democracy is preferable. Smaller shares are saying democracy is preferable to any other alternative. And growing shares, it doesn't matter anymore. So that does not matter anymore camp is really growing in this province. So again, just to state, the duty to vote is probably the linchpin. It's things holding things together and at a moderately high turnout level in the province. If we see that break down, we might see a real shift in citizen norms. And it will take a character, particularly amongst younger voters or younger members of the voting age public in KZN, that they'll switch away from this. We saw the strong sense of loyalism and duty is in place in KZN. That could change very quickly and be replaced by a new form of political norm that doesn't necessarily involve the ballot box. So really, we do not want to see that duty to vote decline, because if it does, together with these other growing harsh views on democracy, it may really erode turnout significantly in future election years. So the various dynamics that we've seen, we've just mapped out just a few of what we could in the time available that contributed to the low turnout scenario we saw in LG21 will become particularly crucial for next year's national and provincial election, and indeed beyond. So the debate that needs to happen, both provincially and nationally, is what can we do? What can we do to move us increasingly away from the scenario that we're seeing and begin to restore the faith, the confidence in the growing number of disaffected Democrats that we're seeing in the country? And again, to restate, it matters fundamentally for the country's youth, many of whom are disengaging from the politics of the ballot box, and importantly, many have not yet come out and had their first electoral experience. We have a culture of voting. Once you've voted, you have a tendency to vote again. If you don't have that first electoral experience, you don't have that memory, that institutionalized memory to draw on, that thing that will inspire you to come out again. And that's why it matters fundamentally. So what's the recommendation? I think we need to be honest about what can the Commission do and what can it not do. The Electoral Commission can't do much to change the political mood in the country, but it can emphasize key messages about the importance of voting, so shoring up that sense of my vote makes a difference, that internal political efficacy, and encourage citizens to use the power of their voice. You know, we can use the power of voice to toy, or we could use the power of voice to actually have a political outcome through the ballot box. And we want to try and encourage that. Use the power of your X. Online registration, as we saw, has been positively received. And the further innovations to promote convenience for the electorate, particularly the young electorate, will respond favourably, should help with some elements of turnout. Balloting education. We assume that everyone knows what a ballot paper looks like, how to accurately find your party of choice on that ballot paper. They're becoming longer and more complex. It is a particular need, and we're emphasising that. The Commission's made innovations by putting proper mock ballots on the website ahead of each election, and MP was the local government election of 21 is a crucial first time where we saw mock ballots occurring. And we need more time, particularly for those first-time voters. Back in '94, there was a whole campaign around learning to vote. We need to make sure that those ongoing efforts, particularly for younger voters, happen. The strong civic messaging is a given, particularly re-emphasising duty to vote, power of the vote, use of one's vote to ensure accountability and post-electoral responsiveness. But the growing disillusionment, and this is, I'd say, to some extent beyond the remit of the Commission, the growing disillusionment needs to be swiftly addressed, as the voter participation survey results really suggest that once we lose that efficacy, and once it has that effect, extended effect on duty, it's really difficult to recapture it and inspire a return to the ballot box. So we need to do something before it gets to that level of it exacerbates and becomes even worse than what we're seeing in recent years. So on that happy note, thank you very much, and back to the chair.
Thank you very much, colleagues, for that informative presentation. I'm not going to waste time. I'm going to move on and invite the other colleagues to reflect on these outcomes. I have here Mr. Sisipo Solani. Is he not available?
No, he's not available. We have Mr. Pungose and Mr. Kumar.
Okay, apparently Mr. Solani is not available. Can I invite Ms. Pungose because she has a presentation, a short presentation. Where's Ms. Pungose? Oh, it's the lady with the hat. Okay. Let's see. Is it here? The presentation?
It's in your inbox. Can you have it? Okay.
Over to you, Ms. Pungose. There's a caucus here, politics. Okay, over to you.
Greetings, everyone. All protocol observed. One may begin by firstly appreciating the conducted study. In looking at this, I thought it would be important to also look at the role of the IEC as provided for by the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. The Chapter 9 established the institutions, and one of those institutions was the IEC. The IEC has a legislative role to promote and protect democratic electoral processes as provided for in the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. An important element in this mandate is to encourage voters to vote. To this end, the Commission places great focus on increasing voter registration and turnout by investing in civic education and outreach programs to encourage citizens to register and ultimately vote. This mandate, it does not only remain with the Constitution, it also goes to being ethical, to encourage voters to vote and also to protect the democracy and the values of our democracy. As said, the ethical mandate of the IEC is founded on the recognition that elections serves as the lifeblood of liberal democracy by promoting policy debates, electing representatives, and determining the composition of legislatures. The legitimacy of the electoral processes is rightly considered as essential for the establishment, sustainability, and consolidation of our democracy. The studies have shown that in a space or in a country where citizens are not happy with the processes of institutions such as IEC, it leads to public dissatisfaction and protesters. In looking at this, the conducted studies show that the IEC systems have improved and people found registration processes easy. This brings a glimmer of hope that the country is on the right track and that the IEC is delivering on its constitutional mandate. According to the report, South Africans also have good experiences at voting stations, and we're generally happy with the quality of services rendered by the Commission officials. As expressed, it shows that they have faith in the IEC and what IEC is doing. And we highly appreciate IEC for that. And I think it should be highly appreciated as when we would look at the neighbors, the sister countries, how the elections are conducted. I think IEC have a good story to tell. Well, we appreciate the successes of the IEC, but we do have challenges as a commission. As pointed out by the study that IEC there are challenges that hinders it from executing its mandate. The number has shown that the number of citizens who are unhappy with how democracy is functioning in the country leads to them being unhappy with how IEC is conducting its mandate. The studies pointed out, as it is reflected, that there's a study, an evaluation study that was conducted on how municipalities are performing. And it shows that people, because of the services that they receive at a municipality level, then they are not happy with what IEC is doing. As it shows that in the report that in 2021, only 35% of South Africans believe in the power of voting, or as believing that their vote will make a difference. This is a cause for concern in terms of democratic consolidation of our country. I would recommend that the IEC continue doing its good job, executing its role in encouraging the citizens of this country to be responsible citizens, go out and cast their votes. You're welcome. And also, I applaud IEC for incorporating research in terms of improving or system optimization. This is very, very important. I also encourage IEC to also look at opting for evaluation studies. As an evaluator, I think I would be biased to, as evaluation studies will come up with improvement plans, policy briefs. I think that it will be very much beneficiary to the IEC to also look into investing to such. And also, I would recommend that the government must invest more in the institution, as we have, I think, established that it's one of the most important in terms of protecting our democracy. So the budget for the commission, I think government should just give them what they deserve, as we have said that they're doing well. And lastly, I would like to recommend that studies such as this one should be supported and should be continued. In my conclusion, what is clear from this report is that the blame for the current situation, we have said that there are challenges. The blame for the current situation rests on the actions of those who are elected, and not so much on the IEC. The reason people are not happy, it's not because IEC is not doing their job. It's because IEC are advocates of a political system that people are no longer happy with. The IEC advocacy role for an effective electoral system does not extend to holding politicians accountable to their promises. The IEC mandate is to run an election, and it's doing that very well, according to the study that we have said. Against the above, one may ask, how do we as IEC continue to effectively execute our constitutional mandate and encourage voter participation for a political system that people are no longer happy with? How do we do that as IEC? I think we should all just reflect on that one. And also this study that we have shared on today, I think it encourages everyone to look at the current state of our country and find amicable solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pungose. I like your head. Mr. Khumalo. Mr. Khumalo is the director at the Center for Community Development. He's just going to make a few comments as well. Then I'll tell you a story.
Sanibonani. Ninjani? Siphilile nathi. Siyabonga. Sibonga ithuba kuqala from the IEC to be one of the people who maybe give more input on what the research has shown us. From my side, I'm going to speak from the community side of what the community on the ground do perceive the IEC first, what the IEC is, or what animal it is, the IEC. As the research has shown us before, it shows us that the people on the ground do confuse the IEC with government. They still do. They still say government, IEC is part of is government on its own. If they are disgruntled with the government, then they say it's the IEC's doing, of which the research now needs to be brought into the communities as well, so that the communities can do better or have that better understanding of the IEC, of who IEC is and what IEC's role is. And we as a community-based organizations, we do try to educate the community on who is the IEC as the Chapter 9 institutions, of which we think all Chapter 9 institutions have not done well in educating the communities or the public at large on who is or who are the Chapter 9 institutions, of which the gap still remains there. And also the other issue is that the community do confuse or maybe take their living standards as a determinant factor, of which they do, as the study also have alluded, that they do have that measure of democracy, of how of participating in the elections. As we are gathered here, we are saying that all people have a power to vote, but people don't see the vote as a determined power that they can, if they exercise that voting power, then things will change, of which we need more education, of which I've seen IEC is doing that well, of which we have, as an organization also, we have also collaborated with IEC on some educational aspects, of which we need to do more in educating our communities on that right or in that power, also in that voting power, so that they can, because people, they do go and register to vote, but when exercising that voting power on the day of the voting, they don't exercise that power. And also another aspect is that democracy is the only preferred system for now, of which it can make people's voices be heard, of which the people are also for that, if they can maybe be educated on such also, that they do have that power. As people, we always, on our civic education dialogues, we always say people, they always chant that slogan, that amandla, and then they say awethu, and then they don't receive that in their heart, that the power is always relying on them, on all the things to change and all the aspects, so that it can change. We are fully behind the IEC for the fairly work they are doing, of which we are as an organization also, of which we are representing the community of where we are in Umlazi. We are based in Umlazi, of which we work with the communities, of which we conduct fairly monthly the civic education dialogues, of which we try to make the people understand on what on that power that they have, and also to make them. I heard earlier that There was a research which was done that the people do in other countries, that they do equate civic or civic duties with being part of civic or active citizens. We do need those type of educational activities around civic education, so that people can become active citizens, not those passive citizens that they are. We do congratulate the IEC on the work and the research. We thank the HSRC for conducting the research. We thank you very much.
Thank you, Mashoba and Mziligas. Bamashini. Uthi ubhuti wami omdala ngizoyisho ngesiZulu lento uzoyisho ngesiNgisi. Uthi ubhuti wami ke omdala bathu uEdmund wayethi ungapho ngilandele eduzane ngoba mangisuza kuzosala nawe abantu bezokunuka wena. Manje IEC ngiyibona ngathi ilandela ugovernment eduzane, yiko ugovernment mayisuza kunuka iIEC. So those who don't understand this Zulu, they may just laugh. They must. Astoli. All right, I'm going to invite my boss to come talk to us about the electoral amendments that have just been approved by government with much difficulty. I must add, because I suspect that political parties, what is this?
This is my laptop.
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh, am I showing things I'm not supposed to be showing? Oh.
I've never see what they saw.
Secrets. Okay. I'm trying to upload the presentation here from my boss so that she doesn't have to. Yes, please come forward, Mrs. Masinga.
Good afternoon, everyone. Protocols observed, but I cannot go without acknowledging our partners, UKZN, for allowing to co-host the session with us. HSRC, be careful that you don't become our cousins and also start being found guilty by association, because these things happen. Thank you very much, and to the other two colleagues, Ms. Mpungose, no Mr. Kumado, who have come in and shared their reaction to the study. We appreciate that a lot. I always say, as the IEC, you'll be surprised when we go to communities and conduct our outreach activities. Must be Zabantabase. So what we do, we find organizations, organic organizations from the communities, and we work through them. We know that if we leave information with them, it's going to spread out in the community. So we identify any civil society entities that we find in communities, and we make sure we empower them with the information on the election framework, and then we leave, and we know that things are going to happen after we have left. So that's exactly how we found Mr. Kumalo and the team that he works with in Mlazi Township. They are not the only ones, there are quite a few. We are quite a small organization. When we talk about the IEC in a municipality, we're talking 2 people. That's the IEC. In all the 44 municipalities, with the exception of just eThekwini and Umsunduzi, because of the size of the municipality, you'll find more than 2 people in the office. But basically, the IEC is 2 people, and we work through other entities that we found in communities in terms of spreading the knowledge around the election framework. So thank you very much for agreeing to join us today. It's important that we get reactions from the communities themselves on the studies that we do. It's going to be a very short presentation. I think even abridged doesn't begin to describe what I'm going to be doing here today. I know this is not why we are here, but because it's a topical issue, we always use the opportunity when we have a captured audience to just spread the word as far as we can so that people understand what has happened in terms of the legal framework that governs elections. And I'm sure you've been following in the media the developments around the Electoral Amendment Bill, which is now the Electoral Amendment Act, as signed into law on the 17th of April this year. And you will pick up that even though it's been signed into law, there were already threats of legal challenges on the bill itself before it was even signed into law. Because if you've been observing the space, the changes that we have seen happening is that there have been just a slight modification of the electoral system that we've been using in the country at provincial and national level. And as a result, we did expect that there was going to be a pushback from sectors of the society that expected to see a drastic change of the electoral system in the country, which was not possible in the time frame that Parliament had to do this job. The ruling was in around June 2020, if I'm not mistaken. And if you know how long it takes to take a piece of law through the parliamentary processes, it was itself not sufficient. We believe that the process was started late because it happened just in the midst of COVID and everyone was concerned with COVID in the country. And as a result, the processes started late. The public consultation process was flawed with challenges as well, and which is why that you would have picked up that as the bill got signed into law, there was a provision made that immediately after the 2024 elections, the new process resumes where we look at something closer to a total overhaul of the electoral system in the country, because we know that's what the South African population will be expecting going into the 2029 elections. That's how far we are in our planning. We are already talking 2029 general election. So as indicated, I will touch a bit on what the National Assembly would look like, what the implications are for the National Assembly, the provincial legislature. I will touch, it's just one slide each on these topics. That's how abridged it is. Candidate nominations, what are the implications for our candidate nomination processes? The signature requirements for people wanting to contest the elections as independents. The ballot paper, what it means for the ballot paper that is going to be used, a quick overview of the seat calculation framework, given that we now have independents that are going to be contesting the elections, and then briefly what is going to happen immediately after the elections. Now, I did say the change is quite superficial in terms of the electoral system as a whole, but we're still going to continue having a multi-member. You remember that ordinarily in the 400-member legislature that we have at a national level, 200 seats assigned based on the list that parties provide to us at a national level, but there's also another list that is never publicized, which is the regional list of people that are seconded by provinces to sit in the national legislature. So that's how you arrive at the 400. We have never had to explain this in the past, but since the advent of independence, it is important that we explain that, because out of the 400 seats, 200 will be assigned to political parties, and the other 200 seats, with our regional seats, will be split between political parties and independents, because that's where the independents are going to feature in the national ballot. They will only contest the 200 seats out of the 400, because the other 200 is still reserved for political parties. And now the one area that independents or civil society organizations that challenge the legislation to begin with are not happy with is that the other 200 seats, the regional seats that will be contested by independents, they will still be contesting those with political parties as well. So political parties contest the 200, but they also can field candidates to contest the other 200 seats that are reserved for independents. So we're still going to be using the multi-member two-tier compensatory system, which is a closed list system as well, which is what we've been using in the country all along. It's the multi-member because it's based on party lists. We don't have people that are contesting constituencies as such, and you would have picked up that with the amended law, the whole province is still treated as a constituency, which was also another bone of contention by the civil society entities that had challenged the law to begin with. We still work with a list, and it remains the closed list by political parties. It only becomes public once it's been submitted to the Electoral Commission. So when you go to vote for a political party, it's up to the party to decide to become part of that list. The reason is a compensatory system as well, is that similar to what happens at local government at the moment, when we have to achieve general proportionality once we have started allocating seats. It doesn't mean that if a party wins all the wards in eThekwini and then get 60% in the PR ballots at the local government level, we will first assign them all the wards that they have won, and then we'll say you also get 60% on the PR ballots. It doesn't work like that. We have to look at the total percentage of support for that party in the municipality. We will assign the wards because we can't interfere with the wards, but on the PR side, we can only give them whatever will still result in general proportionality. So if we look at the people that voted for that party on the ward ballots and the people who voted for the party on the PR ballot, combined gives the party 25% of the overall vote. The number of seats that the party will have will be equivalent to 25%. So that's something that we always have to clear, because people will say we got all the wards and we got 60%. We should be having all the wards plus 60% of all the seats. It doesn't work like that. It's a formula that we, at least political parties, understand, because we spend a lot of time with political parties explaining it. The regional seats out of the 400, the 200 are regional seats. Those regional seats differ from province to province depending on the population in that province. So provinces that have got higher population get a higher quota of the 200 regional seats. When they talk about the region, in this case, they are talking about a province. We haven't arrived at a point where we divide the country into constituencies, which is closer to the first past the post system that we see in other countries. We will be using a troop quota system as well to make sure that we are able to deal with the surpluses that always arise with proportional representation system. It means, it doesn't necessarily mean that if a quota to get a seat in parliament is 80,000, to get a seat we have to get 80,000. We will allocate seats to the whole numbers, but even if you get a fraction, the troop quota says we then assign the seats to the highest fraction. So you may end up getting a seat through a fraction, depending on where you sit in terms of the fractions that always come up with the PR systems. With the inclusion of the independents, each voter will receive 2 ballots at national level. That's the major change, because for national provincial elections, we always have 2 ballots, 1 national and 1 provincial. This time around, we're going to have 2 ballots because that regional component of the 400 seats we have never had to vote for before. But now that we've got independence, there will be a second ballot which will feature both political parties and independents, where they will be fighting for the 50% of the seats in the legislature. This is what this looks like, but don't worry, we will publicize this a lot to educate people that we will now be having 2 ballots for the national legislature. The first tier that I was talking about is when we allocate seats to independents that would have won seats on that second ballot at national level. Once we've done that, we then go through the second tier of seat allocation, where we now look at the overall support the parties got vis-a-vis the seats that have been taken by independents, and then we will do the ultimate allocation. That is where we will then apply the group quota. At the provincial level, it's still multi-member but single tier structure, because we don't have that component of seats being split between the political parties and the independents. Everybody will be contesting along the same terms at provincial level, whether you're a political party or an independent. So there will only be one ballot still at the provincial level, and everybody will be contesting along the same terms. So there isn't much in terms of the number of ballot papers. So overall, for national provincial elections, we'll have 3 ballots, 2 at national and 1 at local level. I've given references in terms of where you can find this information if you are interested in understanding it in more detail, how it's going to work out in practice. But the things that I would like to emphasize are the last 2 points. The fact that when vacancies happen, there won't be by-elections. What we'll do is that we'll rework the quota minus the votes that would have been won by the independent candidates that got the seats. If they resign or anything happens to them that results in a vacancy, we'll just have to rework that quota and start allocating again using the group quota system. Candidate nomination is another critical area that people are interested in. Basically, what these slides mean is that to contest at national level, you can basically be anywhere in the country, and you can contest any region in the country. But to contest at the provincial level as an independent, you should be on the provincial segment of the voters' roll for the province that you intend contesting. Now, if you are contesting the 200 regional seats at national level, you have to meet the minimum requirements. Basically, what we are working on is that we look at the number of votes that a member of parliament required to get a seat in the very last general election for that sphere of government. So we've worked out what that means, and the ultimate agreement was that it's going to be 15% of what it took to win a seat in that sphere of government, and that's the number of signatures that you will need to contest. So if you choose to contest all regions, for example, it means all provinces as an independent. For as long as you meet the quota for Gauteng, which is the highest quota, because it took the highest number of seats in Gauteng compared to other provinces to get a seat in their legislature. So if you miss the quota in Gauteng, you can pretty much contest any other province because you have demonstrated support, because that's what is required. So you will need to collect a number of signatures to be able to contest, and those signatures are equivalent to 15% of the number of votes it took to get a seat in that legislature in the previous election. Sorry, I wanted to jump. This is what the signature requirement looks like. At the regional level, which means the 200 seats that you contest at the national level, you will see, for example, the top one is Eastern Cape. The quota in the Eastern Cape to get a seat was 77% in the regional list, and that means you need 15% of 77%. It means an independent intending to contest the regional seat to national in the Eastern Cape requires 11,656 signatures. For KZN, that translates to 13,000 signatures, basically, if you want to contest the 200 seats at national level of people that will represent KZN on that regional portion. But if you go to the provincial legislature, the quota in the legislature was 44,000. That means that how many votes it took to get a seat in our provincial legislature. 15% of that is 6,663. So if anyone here has aspirations of standing as an independent and contest a seat in our provincial legislature, they will have to collect 6,663 signatures to qualify to be on the ballot. How long the ballot will be, that's a story for another day. There will be a deposit that you'll have to pay to contest, and that deposit will or may differ from what is required from political parties. We haven't arrived at that point yet to tell what the amount is going to be that you'll need to pay, because there's signatures, but then there's a deposit that you need to pay, which you only get back if you at least get 10% of the votes in the level of government you are contesting. We expect that candidates will all take an oath, because they will be bound by the Electoral Code of Conduct. We will also expect candidates to submit a declaration to the Electoral Commission to confirm that those 6,000 plus people that you have nominated you or have indicated support for you correctly registered on the voters' roll, and that they meet all the requirements and they are not in any way disqualified. There are grounds for disqualifying somebody to support you. If you are contesting KZN, your 6,000 plus supporters should be on the KZN segment of the voters' roll. I think seat calculation, I'm not going to waste time. I've spoken about how it's going to work. If you are interested, we are going to be posting that on the IEC website just for people to understand. But basically is what I already indicated, that we allocate everything, including surpluses, for as long as there are seats. We're going to be ranking fractions or surpluses from political parties. I indicated that is 40,000 plus, 44,000 plus. You need to get a seat in KZN based on the last elections. You may end up as getting a seat with 20,000 seats, depending on whether we may still have surplus seats when we start seat allocation. The last two slides talk about what is going to happen after elections. I have summarized that for you. I'm not going to go to it in detail, but basically the Minister of Home Affairs is supposed to set up an electoral reform task team that is going to go back to the drawing board to look at how can we accommodate all these submissions that have already been received in terms of the nature of an electoral system that South Africans aspiring for. So that process will start immediately after the 2024 elections. We will be working with a whole lot of institutions. The IEC will definitely be participating in that process, but it's not an IEC system because lawmaking is not one of our responsibilities. But of course, we do get consulted at a technical level in terms of feasibility of any system that will come out at the end. So brace yourself that soon after elections, the conversation starts again, and we now talk about the total overhaul of the electoral system that we are currently using in the country, and hopefully that process will conclude within 12 months after the next year's elections. In terms of the time frame, that 12 months, we are looking at this stage at the fact that the first national sitting of the present administration was on the 22nd of May 2019, which means their term of office expires on that week in May next year. We are planning to hold an election anytime in that 90-day window, which opens on the 22nd of May and expires on the 22nd of August. So at this stage, we're still in consultation. So whenever that election happens, within 12 months, this other process should have been almost going towards conclusion of trying to then overhaul the electoral system. I think that is sufficient. Program Director, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Masinga. May I invite Mr. Mashinini to the front, the other presenters to sit here, please, because we are now going to take questions, and I would like you to see whoever is asking a question. Please have a pen and paper, or if you are advanced like me, you can bring your tablet. Okay. So from what Mrs. Masinga was saying just now, theoretically, and I'm saying theoretically, you could have 80 independents in KZN, in the KZN legislature. So if the independents win all the seats in KZN, you could have a legislature that has 80 independents. So because all those 80 seats are up for grabs between political parties and independents. You could also have the legislature that you have now that doesn't have independents, if the independents don't grab even a single seat come next year. Just a caution, when you look at this, remember when we talk about regions, we are referring to the same provinces, but in relation to the national seats for independence. But when we talk about the provincial seats, we will use the word province. New parties are being formed every day. I think a few weeks ago, the IEC published a list of new parties that have been registered, and we expect that there will be more registrations. It's important to note that if you form a party now and you are not represented, therefore, in the current legislature, you will need to meet the same requirements that the independents have to meet. You have to garner those signatures and you have to pay a deposit. All right, can I take questions now or comments or points of clarity? I'm going to take all the questions that are available, and we will then respond to them. The panel members will respond to those questions. The floor is open. I'm not sure how the system works. Do we have mobile mics? Yes, it looks like we have. Can I see hands? Students are allowed to ask as well. Okay, there is a hand. If you can just say your name, sir. I know you. I know that others may not know you. Can we take that first comment?
Thank you, Chairperson. I want to firstly, my name is Asghar Khan. I represent Al Jama in the KZN province on the PLC. Firstly, I want to thank the team that presented the research for a very well-rounded and research that has given us insight into many new developments that are taking place in the minds of the people. You can put it that way. I think the research will assist political parties in holding their public representatives to account. I think if you look at the research that people are losing trust in not only the political system, but also the political representatives or the representatives of political parties in the different spheres of government. I think what came out very, very clearly is that voters want political representatives or the political parties that are representing them to be held accountable. And I think that's something the IEC needs to look at in going forward, in how can we hold political representatives or public representatives accountable, and there must be some kind of evaluation method, maybe midway through. I heard one of the presenters saying that she's an evaluator, so maybe we need to explore that avenue. I think in terms of the amendment of legislation, just a clarification on the 15% quota. I think Mr. Duma, you touched on it, but if you can just clarify that the political parties that are already represented in any one of three spheres of government won't have to go through that 15% signatory thing. So I'm covered on that. So thank you. We really appreciate this engagement that we had today, and we want to thank the IEC and UKZN for inviting us.
Thank you very much. Do I have other hands? Oh, that is strange. Was it that clear? Oh, there's a hand here. This gentleman is the only other gentleman in the room, apart from me.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. All protocol observed. My name is Kosinati Ben. I come from ATM, African Transformation Movement in KZN. My point of worry is the number of community outreach programs that IEC engage in. I think there is no sufficiency with regards to invisibility of IEC. The IEC, sometimes my observation may actually be proven otherwise, but I'm just warning IEC not to work almost the same way as the political parties, who will be more active at a time of elections, be somehow quiet during, quiet in the sense of not too much too much activity and visibility, only to be reawakened and more activated at the time of elections. That actually defaces the institution. That is one. So visibility programs. The reason why now, just as a way of warning, why you may not be getting enough cooperation at a time, critical times of elections, that you would find yourself wanting as to how to reach out to the communities and get the response, that the positive response with regards to attendance and stuff like that. It's because people know you only at a particular time. That is one thing that is observable and should be taken seriously by IEC. You would not actually find yourself wanting of the audience if you were to be readily available and continuously and consistently visible to the people. Another one factor is the separate education, voter education programs that are undertaken by IEC on one hand, when the political parties themselves as well have to actually do their own exercise. I suggest and recommend, for efficiency of the whole exercise, I suggest that IEC tries by whatever means to actually do the exercise of educating people with regards to voting collectively with the political parties, so that there will never be a time, IEC, where you might be seen to be biased with any organization politically. Because the stink that IEC has is the stink that Bab Duma was referring to, where you actually are running closer behind a certain political party, and when that political party farts, you become stinking. You stink. They
I
just.
didn't say political party. I said
okay.
Government.
I'm just looking at I'm contextualizing it. So as to guard against that, please try to spread yourselves as much as possible in the activities of all these political organizations but I do understand that the nature of funds are a factor to your inefficiency. The government must therefore be conscientized of a need to actually reboost the funding that is given towards IEC and the political parties. I am aware that this month and year, KZN the KZN legislature has set aside some funds. But you can actually feel that even those funds that have been set aside for political or voter education are insufficient. And also IEC does not have funds enough to actually become as efficient as they may actually dream or aspire to become. So the government must actually be conscientized of such that they need to bring in even more money. Yeah, I think I have covered the ground for now. I will come back for more. Thank you.
ATM. Thank you. So does ATM have money? Since you are ATM. Automatic teller machine.
Automatically ATM with its programs.
You are covered.
We are covered. We are actually moneyed enough, more especially as a self-funded organization. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any other hand? There's a hand at the back. There's another one here.
Not. Thanks, Chairperson or Program Director. My name is Pilan Makoba. I'm from the African National Congress. I just want to ask two simple questions. I don't want to comment much. I don't want to get into the trap of trying to explain that analogy. Of walking behind a person. My first question is that on the research, the class composition of the sample that was used, the class composition, maybe it can explain few things for us in terms of getting interested in democracy. Number two, is the issue of is the last presentation saying that the act as it stands now has got an expiry date, which is the election date next year. Does it have an expiry date? I think that's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Makoba. I think there was another hand, or there are two now.
Oh, hi. I don't know if I have to introduce myself or... I don't know if I have to introduce myself.
Yes. Why do you think you are different from other people? You have to introduce yourself. We don't know you. Or are you the famous golfer of America, maybe?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Tsobani Madlala.
Obanwa?
Tsobani Madlala.
Tsobani Madlala.
Yes, I'm actually a student here in UKZN.
Khulumela phezulu ke mfundi wami.
Oh, okay. Oh, mine is so simple. I just wanted to know, as we had at the Pala saga last year, do we believe that next year there will be no organization buying votes? Okay.
As we had, do we believe there will be no organization buying votes next year?
As we had the Pala saga.
Okay. Another question?
Oh, my name is Bayanda. I'm one of the students here at UKZN. Bayanda Mantengo.
Bayanda?
Mantengo.
Mantengo?
Yes.
Okay.
I wanted to ask here what happens when IEC finds out that one of the political parties won the election through fraudulent activities. Like if they discover that, do they recall that organization and restart the elections or what?
Okay. What happens if you discover that a party won through fraudulent means? What is the recourse there? There's another hand this side.
Greetings to everyone at large. My name is Mangoba Mchunu from Highway Radio. So I'm just going to be brief. I don't have much to say. But I just want to find out here from the panel, just the first question. I have 3 questions. But the first question has got to do with the new legislation with regards of the independent candidates for the upcoming elections. So my first question with regards of that is, how ready is the IEC to handle the new chapter? That's the first question. And then the second question is, what limitations does the...
Sorry, opinion local, how ready is the IEC?
Yeah, how ready is the IEC when it comes to the new chapter of the new legislation?
The new chapter?
Yes, yes, yes.
Oh, okay.
And then the second question is, what limitations does the independent candidates have? And then the last question is, what could be expected on the upcoming elections? Yeah, those are just the 3 questions that I have. Thank you.
What limitations do independent candidates have? Okay, and the last one, you're saying what could be expected? Upcoming elections. That's too broad, my friend. What do you mean? Be specific. Anything can be expected. In what regard?
Like maybe regarding with the voters, with the votes, are they going to decrease? Are they going to increase? Are they going to be changes and all that? Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, in that way.
Okay. All right. Any last question? Okay, I see we have no permits alenda to in the states got sabi suke yezwa ngithi ngikhuluma nge-machine learning. And then we'll take the last one.
Okay, no problem. Greetings, everyone. My name is Kosinati Masinga, SRC member. My question is, what does IEC do to accommodate those people who come from disadvantaged backgrounds, especially to understand how they feel about the voting processes, election processes? Like, what is it that is being done by IEC to accommodate them, or do you guys go to them and get their views before making the final decisions about the processes?
Okay. Another pregnant question. All right, can we take the last one?
Firstly, greetings everyone. My name is Fundiswa Mvubu. I'm also a student at UKZN. Basically, my questions are also extensions to two prior gentlemen who have asked questions. Firstly, I would like to extend on the question that was recently asked about disadvantaged people. When Dr. Ben Roberts was talking about the surveys and also the reports that are done by IEC that are also available to the public, particularly the election indicators report. He talked about that it covers a lot of the reports a lot about the provincial and the national basically community. But I didn't hear him mentioning the local, which is what I would like to ask, is that is the local government or the local sector also included in the reports, or it's just summarized in terms of the provincial level? And to extend on the sample, when you spoke about that, in order to when the surveys are conducted, you sample out certain regions that are involved in elections. So what is the criteria to selecting that sample? And whenever you're doing, we have seen that it's the survey has gone on for multiple years. So in order to check the progress, do you still do you go back to the same sample that you've selected the previous year, or then do you choose a different sample? And if it is like that, how do you ensure the validity of the results that or the reports that you have just shown us? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was the last question. Perhaps if I may also add a question maybe for Mr. Mashinini, and perhaps even the researchers, is South Africa ready for e-voting, if I may call it that? Are we ready to vote online? We're buying things online. We are spending money online. We are even playing lotto these days online. Everything is online. So are we ready to vote online, electronically? Would that not make the numbers look better if we voted electronically? All right, I don't know who wants to come first. The researchers, can we give you Dr. Roberts and your team? Dr. Zondi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. A lot of questions.
Just respond to the questions that are directed at you.
Okay.
And leave the others for the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll start with Mr. Khan. Thank you for your comments, sir. I think it's, yes, from the surveying, it does seem that the voters do want some mechanism for accountability. I think the survey itself and the expression of the views coming through, as I said earlier, are an appeal for more accountability. We would expect, because South Africans are quite responsive to developments on the ground, that if they felt things were improving, we'd see the views improve. And certainly the fact that we've seen them worsening means that they feel the accountability mechanism isn't working in practice. I think I'll leave the question to the IEC, but I'll just say that the expectation that the IEC must come up, explore how the representatives must be accountable. I don't think that's the right mechanism. I think the representatives themselves must hold themselves accountable. I don't think that's within the remit of the IEC, but I'm sure Commissioner and others will respond to that. And KwaZulu-Natal, I think, yeah, you asked two particular questions. Just to say, my initial response to community outreach was actually probably you answered your own question. I think it is constrained by the funding available for that. The public, when it does get voter outreach, because we ask about outreach, the public is very positive about outreach. There's a strong demand for more information, which is a good thing, but it needs to be realized. But it always comes back to that. And I think just as someone that's independent from the Independent Electoral Commission, I think it's really important to say that we do need to express concern about the erosion of the Commission's budget. I think it does have bearing on those kind of outreach activities that are crucial to, with each successive election, not just on, as you said, ahead of election day, but continuously. So that I'll leave the Commission and Mohisi and others to answer more about that particular set of questions. I think, Mr. Makoba, your question about class composition, I think is crucially important. And I think some of your other colleagues from UKZN, in asking about disadvantaged people are also resonating with that point. The sampling is designed to be representative of all South Africans 16 years and older. So we do get a broad sweep of class coming through. It's not just interviewing wealthy suburbanites. We're going to informal settlements, we're going to deep rural areas. It is designed to be, we do in-person interviewing, and the sampling is designed to cover the entire country. So we do make sure we cover broad ranges of geography and class in what we do in our surveying. Let's just see. I know the IEC behind me was saying we must answer the question about do we believe there'll be no vote buying in next year's election. I think we can't answer it through our own point of view. We can answer it through what
that one is for political parties to answer. I'm going to take it back to the political parties.
So that's a tough one. Yeah. So let's the parties let them try and answer that. I think.
No, ATM.
I think KwaZulu-Natal and Fundiswa, just to deal with yours combined, so that, again, the questions about disadvantaged backgrounds. I think certainly the sampling covers that, as I said, like class covers people of different backgrounds, including disadvantaged versus privileged. In terms of our reporting, we have different types of reports. these reports, like the provincial one and the national reports, are an aggregation of those individual voices. So we take all those voices, disadvantaged and otherwise, and aggregate them to say what's the provincial picture, what's the national picture. There's other reports that we prepare for the Commission which are much more in depth, that look at the views of different segments of society in much more detail, including disadvantaged voices versus others. So that research is there. We've done a wealth of multivariate analysis around that. So it may not feature in the summary reports, although we have talked as a team about for future, because our plan is to repeat these with each successive election cycle to put out the updated version of the reports. But we have talked about doing specialized reports, one that speaks to youth, one that speaks to the disadvantaged segments of society. So those have been a conversation. We haven't implemented it yet in these high-level trend reports, but certainly that's something that we are thinking about with the next iteration. This was the first sets of election indicators reports that we put out. So we welcome any kind of suggestions in that regard as to add additional value to our understanding of society and around electoral dynamics. I think I really liked your questions, Fundisa, about the sampling and the type of sampling we do. These are repeat cross-sectional surveys. So they are cross-sectional design. So we're not going to the same individuals in each round of surveying. That would make it a panel survey. The panel survey would answer, are those same individuals changing their views over time? Our emphasis is on a different kind of question, is are the general tendencies changing over time, not the same individuals? Panels are crucially important. We don't have enough panel studies in our country. They can lose some of their representativity over time, in which case you need to replenish those panel samples. But I do think there is space for that. I know other surveys, particularly electoral surveys in other parts of the world, have done mini experiments with small subsets going back to the same, just to add additional value to see if particular individuals of particular background attributes have started changing their views over time, or if it's showing the same tendencies as the general picture. So that's something that could be explored. We haven't done it with this particular survey series. I'll just answer the chair's question about is South Africa ready for e-voting, because we actually have quite a lot of attitudes on e-voting that we've collected. The answer in general is yes. There is a sense that they would favor that option, but it's not an uncritical support. That, like we saw with the online registration, a lot of South Africans harbour the concerns about security, potential for electoral fraud. So the implementation of that, and we've just done a small study for the Commission around electronic voting, is really about the lead-in time. It's going to need a lot of piloting, etc., to see what works. It's going to need a lot of work, the kind of safety and security measures, the kind of voter education in the migration from a paper-based to an electronic format is going to need a lot of lead-in time as well. So I think it has a lot of benefits. The public, it does seem on the whole to be ready for it, but also there's some question marks that will need to be resolved in designing and testing a process such as that. If you look at the PO's presentation about the electoral reform, there is a big question mark about how complex ballot papers are going to become. With the inclusion of independents, we're seeing 3 ballot papers in NPE elections going forward. We saw in previous elections there were 29, 30 candidates on ballot papers. That's going to get longer with the independents. So is it going to become a long scroll, the ballot paper? And does that then also add further impetus towards consideration of a migration to electronic voting? These are the debates that need to happen.
Thank you very much. Do you want to add?
No, Dr. Benjamin has said everything.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm going to start with Mohese Sibanda, the senior manager.
I'm very well audible. Thank you very much. Can I first ask, how many of the students in this room are registered to vote? Please put your hands up. Okay, not so bad. And how many of you intend on voting in the next elections as a further step of your registration? Good. And I hope you...
And how many of you would vote for me if I was an
Oh,
independent?
And I hope you also encourage your fellow students to do the same. I want to answer the question around visibility of IEC outreach, and that we apparently typically show up around time of elections. I think there is some truth to that, but it's also not completely correct, because we are mandated as the IEC to conduct CDE every single year, whether there's an election or not. And we do that, utilizing various platforms, utilizing face-to-face interventions. In fact, for last year, we have an annual target that we set every year. That annual target will increase whenever it is the year preceding an election year. So last year, we had a target of 40,000 civic and democracy education events that we needed to conduct. I don't know if ATM can reach a target that high, but that was our target, and we exceeded it and we got to 49,000 plus events. And that's through interventions, not just as face-to-face, as I said. We work with the media and media platforms, community radio, television, town halls, working with other stakeholders in order to engage audiences. It is also important to remember, although it is our mandate, it is really the duty of all of us, including all of us sitting here, because we do have a stake in nurturing, in safeguarding democracy. It is a long-term relationship that we have with this democracy. It is not instant gratification, and therefore all of us must stay the course and ensure that we inform, we educate, and we work together to ensure that our democracy remains thriving. Do we reach rural areas? Yes, we do, with the capacity that we're able to. We don't have a huge staff. Ms. Masinga did say earlier that IEC is actually not doesn't have a big staff complement, permanent staff especially. Around elections, we do recruit what we call expansion staff, and we do have a cohort of this expansion staff that focuses specifically on outreach. For this coming election, that expansion staff starts coming on board from July 2023 and will end their term in August of 2024. They're going out there in order to assist us with mobilizing, inspiring participation, informing the public around elections. And what will be key for us, again, will be educating the public about the new Electoral Amendment Act. And we are in the process of developing material that you too can utilize as political parties, as SRC, as stakeholders, so that you also educate your own constituencies around the changes that are upcoming. So that will all unfold in the next 2 to 3 months. But I believe, and Commissioner Mashinini and Ms. Masinga will add, from a provincial point of view, we really do our best with the limited resource that we have. And I also think if we were given billions of rands outside of elections, there'd also be a contention around priorities in the country. So there are competing priorities. It's an important thing to fund. It is a concern. I think even as the Commission, we have expressed that, you know, the cutting back of the budget is a concern. However, I really do believe, and I'd like to encourage all of us as stakeholders to not just look to the IEC to do this big job solely, because it does impact all of us. Let us join together to ensure that the public is educated and is informed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Masinga?
Thank you very much. On the caution raised about the need for us to guard against being attached to political parties is a challenging aspect of what we do, because unfortunately the Commission doesn't get the kind of capacity that we need, particularly around outreach, but also to include the infrastructure that we need to conduct elections. We are very much dependent on the different spheres of government. To make an example, when it comes to the delivery of material to voting stations at municipal level, we are almost entirely dependent on municipalities to assist us, because we do not have the kind of capacity that we will want to have as an entity to do that on our own. And the way that the work of the IEC was designed to begin with. It was designed such that we get cooperation from various spheres of government to provide us with the infrastructure that we need to deliver elections. The same will go to outreach. You will find us on the ground working together, for example, with municipalities and the legislature in this province, because they have budgets to reach communities better than us in terms of the footprint that they are able to create in communities. Just last week, we were finalizing a program that we are going to be doing with the legislature in this province, Office of the Speaker, to see how we can piggyback on the resources that they have to be able to reach every corner of this province. So it's something that you cannot run away from. There's always that confusion even in the society itself, that why should we be partnering with government on certain programs? That's exactly how our work was designed. The only thing that the government and the legislature won't get involved in is the technical delivery of the operations of elections. That is the sole mandate of the Electoral Commission. They cannot get involved except to make facilities available to us and the infrastructure available. So it's a difficult one. What we do with outreach is that when we receive an invitation from a political party, we ask political parties to rather channel those requests through municipalities and through the legislature, so that it's easier for us, because once we start responding to individual requests by political parties, there will come a time when we will not be able to honor all of them, and we will then get into trouble over those that we're able to honor. So we try to look for multi-party platforms that are safe for us to collaborate and partner with various entities, even within government. Does the Act have an expiry date, Bab Makob? No, it doesn't. It remains in place until there's a new dispensation in the country. What has been, if you go through the Electoral Amendment Act currently, it's very clear in terms of the process going forward, and the process that is driven by the Ministerial Committee headed by the Minister of Home Affairs was given a clear mandate. They spearheaded the amendment that we are seeing currently in terms of the new law, and they have that responsibility again to take the process forward. Their mandate is clear, but the current law remains in place until such time that we have a new law replacing it. So that's exactly how long that is going to take. Is going to depend how the process after the elections next year is going to unfold. But the timeline that they have is that by the time we get to the 2029 elections, they should have come up with a very clear report, and whether that gets implemented or not is something else. But they have a clear time frame that they are expected to work in, but the current law remains law until they are done with any amendment that may become necessary. Babu Madlal, Utoban, Asaz, we don't know whether there will be vote buying or not. We do not know that there is vote buying, and we heard what people's perceptions are in terms of vote buying, and like my learned colleague here said, we do not know because we don't buy votes. Maybe we need to ask who buys votes, whether they intend buying them again. But basically, on our side, we have no knowledge of votes being bought, and it remains people's perceptions. We don't know what informs those perceptions. What does
noma kwenza usuhambiza ngokuthi baba Madlala
mhlawumbe uyaqala ukubiza kubaba Madlala sayistudent
umfana kaMadlala
umfana kaMadlala Ayanda, I'm not sure if I got his surname correct, Mantejo. Let me not say the surname before I butcher it. Ayanda. Vele uyingane yami ngokweminyaka. What does the IEC do when we discover that the party won elections through fraudulent means? We have checks and balances in our systems that start long before elections, where political parties can object at any stage of the election if they believe that something untoward has happened. You heard earlier, we acknowledge the presence of party liaison committee members. The PLC is a very important structure which is regulated by law, where we consult political parties at every step of delivering an election. From the time we recruit staff, we don't employ a presiding officer or a deputy presiding officer who works at the station without us running those names by political parties first, and political parties saying we are comfortable with these characters presiding over an election at a voting station. You may not know this, but political parties do, and they really do scrutinize those lists of presiding officers. That's over and above other vetting mechanisms that we have for staff that preside over elections at voting station level. I will not go through the detail of that, but believe you me, they go through a lot of screening, including, very comprehensive screening. But over and above that, the electoral system, for example, that we use, before that electoral system is signed off for use in any election, political parties analyze our systems from the back end. We say to political parties, we are now ready, we have designed our result system. Can you then send your IT gurus to go and study our system from the back end and check whether there aren't any hidden algorithms that will change the results at the point of capturing them. We have political parties that have gone as far as outsourcing that to ICT companies in Germany to come and study our systems, because we say to political parties, we cannot go to an election with a system that you don't trust. Don't interact with it from the front, study it from the back, and be comfortable that the way the system is designed is not penetratable by any foreign force that may want to influence the results. Now, when it comes to the results of the elections, the law provides that before we issue the results of an election, political parties that can lodge objections that they believe could be material, if ruled in their favor, will be material to the outcome of the election. That's just one of the few things that exist in our systems. Unfortunately, only political parties will know, because we work with political parties, but with independents coming on board, I think we'll have a bigger body of people within the public that understand how our system works and how we implement our processes. We have more than enough checks and balances. The last one that I thought maybe is worth mentioning, every political party that contests an election is entitled to send 2 party agents to a voting station that observe us from the time we start in the morning until we issue the results at the end, and then they have to sign off to say the outcome of the election in this voting station is exactly what we observed during the day, and we can confirm that we observe the count and what has been captured is exactly what is in the system, and that provision will be extended to independents as well as they come on board. Whether our voting stations will be able to accommodate all those party agents for all those independents and parties is something else. But that's the provision that we have. I think the last one that talked to us, no, how ready are we? Maybe let me leave that for our commissioner at a high level. At an operational level, we are very ready. We start planning the elections from the time we announce results for the preceding election. We are planning to hold elections in May next year. Why May? Because that's the first window that is going to open for us to hold elections. We have a window of 90 days, but all our systems are in place for us to deliver an election in May next year. One example that I'm going to use is the example that Ubabu Duma used. Was it you, Ubabu Duma, who spoke about the ballots? We have already scanned the environment in terms of the printing capacity of this country and the type of the ballot paper that we are likely to end up with. Dr. Roberts, you spoke about a long ballot. We are already talking double column ballot, where in one column is then another list of parties and independents, and in another column is another one. And we have checked whether the printing industry in this country can manage. Currently, they've demonstrated that they do not have that capacity, and we are already looking abroad on printing companies that are able to produce the kind of ballot paper and the type of paper that we need for the ballot paper. So we never stop planning, because we cannot come back as the commission and say we were surprised by what is required. We have to be combat ready, and we have already started, and we know exactly what this country can deliver and where we have to look outside of the borders of this country if there is a particular sector that is not ready to carry the task that we are supposed to carry going into the next election. I think I will then hand over to Commissioner Mashinini to do the sweeping. We call this the sweeping at the IEC. Anything else that we haven't dealt with, he's gonna sweep.
Yeah, but he's got 2 minutes to sweep.
To sweep.
Yeah. He's a commissioner, but I'm in charge today. Just a few minutes, Baba Mashinini. We promised the venue to finish by 2, so we've lost a lot of time.
You've taken half a minute. Thank you, Program Director. No, just let me deal with, firstly, the young lady, I didn't get her name, the last one. Fundi Somvubu. No, I just wanted to make a comment that your question was very impressive. Because being in the company of you as young people and students and scholars, it just highlighted how attuned she was in terms of the technicalities of research. You got your answer. I just wanted to commend the question itself. With regards to most of the questions, I think have been responded to. Perhaps let me deal with Mr. Madlala. The question there is that's why I say it in English. If I said it in Zulu, it would be a problem. The question is that we have electoral laws and legislation. Now, the system is such that the code of conduct and all our electoral laws have to be adhered to. Anyone caught transgressing that, we have either the commission or the electoral court to then address and deal with the transgression. And it's similarly, I think, the question that was also asked by as to what do we expect in terms of the coming elections. Yes, this was from Ulo Maqingwan and our readiness. Maqingwan, Electoral Commission policy and position is prescribed in law and constitution. The law says you have to be ready to deliver the election 1 minute past midnight after the end of term of office. And the term of the political office is 5 years. So 1 minute and 90 days, within 90 days, the head of state can call the election. So we have to be ready. So if you ask the question, what to be expected and are we ready? The answer is yes. And we start well in advance in preparations for the next elections. But the work heightens up in 18 months to closer to the elections. And this also includes the question earlier on that related to the work with voter participation, voter education, and so on and so forth. We rake it up because also the resources that we need. And then the people also, the interests of the people, you know, increases more once we get into that particular period. So it's unfortunate that there could be perceptions and that we might be partisan and so on and so forth. But I mean, even in soccer, very few referees don't get accused of that. But at the end of the day, the biggest test as to whether the institution is actually biased or acts biased or otherwise is that political parties and anybody can take the results that are being announced by the commission and take it straight and challenge it in the courts. And we as a country, we've been fortunate in that we've never actually been taken to court on the basis of national and provincial elections. So that test remains. But what I want to say, that's really where the butterflies are when you are the electoral management body, that you can't control the expansive environment of over 26,000 voting stations, and we employ people for less than a week. And those particular individuals are expected to operate as if they are professors of electoral laws. And when the one is found wanting, then it could lead to the nullification of an election. It has happened. It happened in Malawi. It happened in Kenya. So we in South Africa, we've been able to resolve the issues, as we said. Parties are allowed to send their dispute, and also there are mechanisms that allow us that we can have a mitigation of anything of that nature. But until all the parties have accepted the results, you still remain with the butterflies. And that's also part of the adrenaline and the junkie effect that is with elections, is that it really, it pumps you up in preparing for them, and it's like you're going for an Olympics and all of that. The one more part that at least what you call in terms of the issue of e-voting. As the Commission, we believe that we need to automate optimally all the business processes. And we've been moving, as you now can register electronically and otherwise. But politically, because elections are as much as what is visible and as much as what is perceptions, political parties are not yet ready. When we went to Parliament to ask for the piloting of the technologies, because we've surveyed, we've done that, we've gone around the world, we know what can work, what doesn't work. And in fact, e-voting has a greater value for us. It's not just the voting, it's also the counting of the results, that the results come out immediately, and so on and so forth. So we are working with, and the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs has nominated a team which is doing an international assessment, and they'll be coming back. So it is work in progress with respect to that particular issue. And then there's also this part that relates to the new law amendment and the new legislation. What is important is that the laws are made by your elected representatives. Your legislature, your representatives, it's Parliament that makes laws, and the head of state then passes that into the act. We as the Commission, we implement the law. We don't make the law. But when they are making the laws, they do come to ask us to give a technical advice on the issue. But we just implement that law. So I think it's important that all these things sometimes that recreate perceptions of IEC, this and that no, we, as much as possible, we implement the laws, we don't make the laws. And the last part is that for all the things that we have and that have been raised, we remain vigilant. We take those criticism, we take those concerns, we will be taking them into our continuous planning and so on and so forth. But remember one thing, we are all circumscribed by the resources available to us. But we strive with the little that we have, and that is the nature of the situation. Everybody in the country is faced with what you call budget constraints, because the economy also has got its own challenges. However, we still are ranked among the top in the world. So we take pride in that. Thank you, Program Director.
I think, though, Commissioner and Mrs. Masinga, I thought you would comment. Okay, are you done? Yes, we are. I thought you would comment on the comment that was made by Mr. Khan about the IEC holding publicly elected representatives accountable. And I think Dr. Roberts did answer that.
Thank you. Program Director, I had 2 minutes, so I had to choose. Those that had not been touched, I just jumped. But no, Dr. Roberts is correct. What is accountability? Accountability is that a person that you put into office must account to you as a voter. And the mechanisms that deal with that are listed in what you call, in a number of programs and policies that the representatives and the government must go back to its voters and constituencies. And the ultimate power you have of holding a person to account is your vote. The Electoral Commission is the referee. It doesn't play the game. So expecting the commission to hold the players accountable only with respect to upholding the rules of the game, but not with respect to what you, as a voter, made a decision based on what in marketing we would call invitation to treat. All the participants, and they come with their wares, you know, and like Statamia dancers, you know, can see, they show you and they market their programs, and you as a citizen, you and a voter, you then make your choice. Now it's up to you to then say, is your expectation or were your expectations fulfilled? We as the commission, we can only say, have the rules been adhered to, and deliver the elections, and continue to give you the empowerment to understand that what is the role and the power of your vote. That's why we always talk about the choice is yours. Thank you.
Mrs. Masinga, can you confirm again from Mr. Khan that the 15% threshold or 15% signatures applies only to independents and new parties?
Thank you. You've already told him.
No. I want him to hear Mrs. Masinga saying it.
Mr. Duma, you're absolutely correct. The bottom line is that you should have been a tried and tested political parties. So political parties that already have representation in the various spheres of government do not have to demonstrate that they have support. But if you are a party and you you didn't get any seats in the previous elections, general, national and provincial elections at any level of government, whether at provincial or national level, you have the same obligations as an independent. You need to prove your support. So you are expected as an unrepresented party to submit the same number of signatures as the independent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Hlongwane, you have 2 minutes.
Sanibonani. Ngicela ukubingelela nje i-team kaMazondo, u-executive director nethimba lakhe lonke la UKZN. Ngibingelele wonke ama-stakeholders ethu ekhona lana. I don't have a presentation anymore because I don't want to water down what my commissioner has just said. In fact, he has drawn the lessons from all these presentations and just put them together for you. So manje mangabengenza the presentation now, I will be spoiling, as they say, the broth for all of you. Kodwa nje ngicela ukubonga okwamanje nonke ama-panelists that we're here, uLihle nomsizi. I really appreciate your efforts and the thoughts that you put through, is that you took to understand the brief about this session today. So thank you very much, Bagwethu. Ngibonge ubaba uRobert nethimba lakhe, noShamila and everybody bonke abalaba HSRC, uDr. Zondi, nabo bonke nje abantu abakhona nabangekho from the HSRC that couldn't come here, who were part of this research. What I'm going to say now is that why do we do research as the Electoral Commission? And we do that precisely because of what Commissioner Mashin said, that you want to reflect. You need to look in the mirror and see defects that you may have or that you may think we have. With our days when you look in the mirror and you say, God, today, no. So we just need that from somebody else. That's why we do research, and reflect on the work that we do. So research helps us in planning, like Ubab Mashinin has said. It helps us to improve ourselves as a learning organization. We pride ourselves in calling ourselves a learning organization as the Electoral Commission. And on our systems there to rely on research. They are grounded on research, especially our strategies for civic education that you undertake. Research helps us with planning and improving on a continuous basis all our systems, all our activities. The entire electoral project is grounded on research that we commission or that is done by other people without even our knowledge. Our reports, we are a responsive, this is one of our values, that we're a responsive organization, and therefore we take research as a key driver of transformation, especially with the democracy that you are dealing with. And so yes, democracy development and civic education is part of our national mandate, but we cannot do it alone. My senior manager said that we need all these stakeholders to work collectively to enhance and capacitate our nation in terms of participation. So, and as our democracy grows, with the electorate becoming more savvy, people getting very acquainted with their constitution, especially their political rights, and thus forming political parties, new political parties. The chairman just said that some political parties that were formed. The list is long, it grows every day. We have people that are standing as independents in elections, or people, citizens that are seeking electoral reform. So our challenges are growing as the election management body of the country. We are, however, humbled by the accolades that are derived from empirical studies that were done, and we accept the feedback with so much grace. We work, like I said, we value the work that was done by the HSRC, as it doesn't skim through or give a superficial national view, but it delves into details, province by province, to give us nuances and minutiae that we can use to zero in on better planning, to continually improve all our systems, and like I said, to inform our civic and democratic education and methodologies for a generation that loads anti-democratic policies and practices, which means we must continue to provide such seminars for the public, especially the young people, the youth that is amongst us and that is not here today, to engage with scholarly work in order to grow and enrich our democracy. We all need to seek out information for starters. Sometimes we have this tendency of just speaking without benefits of information. So we all need to seek information for ourselves and to improve our knowledge as people And for us as the Electoral Commission, we need to do hard-hitting political education as well as educating politically. There's a difference between political education and educating politically. But I'm not going to get into that today, but we need to do it, and we need to do that to balance what Commissioner Mashinin was saying, our role as referees between the political parties, the candidates, the electorate, and as we are not empowered by legislation to hold political parties accountable. So we do need to do research, we do need to have these sessions occurring here. And another lesson that we learned is that we cannot be complacent. While voters express faith in the arrangement at voting stations, for example, we need to continuously improve the quality of the voting experience to ensure confidence in our work and reverence, especially that our democracy is not violated. So that's what I meant there. As the electoral as the staff of the IEC, all across the spectrum, we are citizens and we live in communities that are troubled, and we are also troubled and affected as neighbors, as families, as individuals. So we therefore do not take offense in the correlation between trust deficits and voter turnout as we understand this relationship. However, as an election management body of the country, this is the only one that carries the national mandate to manage elections. We are more driven to strengthen our democracy education and push to raise a generation of political diagnosticians that strive to enhance political participation and keep our democracy healthy. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hlongwane. Uzokhuluma njenge-politician? Oh, okay. Ubani uSiphokazi Zondo? Oh, is that your daughter? Awusukume bakubona? Shy. Okay. Apparently she wanted to talk and I didn't recognize her. So I'm recognizing her now. Thank you very much. I think we have come to the end of the session. Dr. Hlongwane here tells me she has arranged some refreshments, but she is asking that we allow our guests, our researchers and PLC members to go first, and then abantu abadala ya ingane zize ngemuva ngoba vele nina nisenesikhathi eside sokuphila. Noma ningadlanga namhlanje nisazodla nakusasa. Yeah, if we can do it in that order, please. We only catered for 80 people, and I think we more or less have that number here. So there should be enough for everyone. I think we are very much grateful to the researchers. The university, Ms. Zondo has left, but I'm sure there are other colleagues from the university. Thank you very much for everything. We must thank Mr. Mashinini for coming down from Gauteng, where he's based, to be with us here the whole day. The political parties that are represented here today, ATM, Al-Jama, ANC. I didn't hear that there were other political parties. UDM is here. Any other party that is represented? COPE is represented. Okay, thank you very much for coming. I think that is very helpful that you are here, and we believe that it will improve our interaction going forward. The students and the student leadership, the media, there are those who are joining us virtually through live streaming. We thank them as well. I'm not sure if we have independents as yet in the house or aspiring independents. Okay, there they are, aspiring independents. We thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. We've come to the end of the session. Did I mention the media? Yes, I did. Thank you very much. We will allow the guests, the researchers, the PLC members to help themselves. Oh, the respondents, yes. Babu Kumalo, no Miss Mpungose laphaya ngemuva. I like your hat. And then we'll allow them to be saved, and then the rest of us can join. Thank you very much. The session is adjourned.